I say it every week after a pay-per-view. There is nothing quite like a numbered card recap on the Anik Florian podcast. Monday, March 11, 2024. It is episode 473 of the show, presented by DraftKings. Ken Flo was in Miami. You had an appearance for Cuervo on Saturday with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And as I understand it, you were there with our guy, Big Ron Pellegrino, and you got pretty excited when that Dustin Poirier victory happened. That meant you swept the board on Place Your Bets. He said you got pretty fucking excited. Not quite Bitcoin going to $72,000 career high for Bitcoin excited, but you got pretty excited after that DP knockout.
There were a lot of high fives, man. I was high-fiving just random people in the bar. It was pretty amazing. Just an amazing card, man. Man, did that thing deliver. I meant to put up a video on my Instagram. I actually wanted to send it to you as well. But when Chito Vera walked out, I mean, that bar exploded. They were chanting like it was a soccer game. So the energy just in that place alone was insane. I can't even imagine at the arena of how it was when those guys walked out. But man, it was so polarizing because you had your hardcore Sean O'Malley USA chants, and then you had your Chito Vera singing. They were literally singing in the bar when Chito walked out anytime the camera was on him. So again, the sport has just gone to a completely different level. You know, I'm not at these UFC pay-per-view events all the time, but just being in and around it, it's just totally different how much this sport has exploded, John. It's wild, dude. It is absolutely wild.
The nationalistic pride that a lot of these fans have for their fighters is just otherworldly. And when we were doing the arrival shots at the top of the pay-per-view, what's being shown on broadcast is also what is being shown, as we call it, in-house.
Right.
So when Chito Vera was shown in-house, bro, I had to completely raise my tone to match the audience so that the people at home could actually hear what I was saying. And Sean O'Malley is a huge fan favorite, but Chito Vera's people came out, and I think that was part of a just emotional, heightened week for Chito. And we have a lot to get to, of course, in our UFC 299 recap today. We're also scheduled to be joined by the Matrix, Kyler Phillips. You got to think when the new bantamweight rankings come out this week that he will have a number next to his name. Ray Longo going to recap the piss out of this thing with us as well. And then we will also spin it forward, as we often do, to UFC Fight Night, Tuivasa versus Tabora. We will get no fewer than 6 main card selections from Ken Flo and Brian Petrie. And then I know Ken Flo can't wait for Place Your Bets, brought to you by JohnAnik.com, because you'll find out just how much money you made. And rest assured, you're in the black on the year. About time you caught a fucking break here, huh?
Tell me about it, dude.
And if you do like my One More Sleep shirt, or Ken Flo's Anik Florian podcast sweatshirt, JohnAnik.com is the website where you can support the program. Promo code One More Sleep. All right, Headlines is brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila. UFC 299 is a wrap. Headlining act was the rematch between Sugar Sean O'Malley and Marlon Chito Vera, this time, though, with decidedly raised stakes for the UFC Bantamweight Championship. And largely, it was all Sean O'Malley, except for that late body shot from Marlon Chito Vera. And had that shot landed maybe 2 minutes prior, we could have a totally different narrative here on a Monday morning. But it is Sean O'Malley, Ken Flo, by unanimous decision. 50-45 times 2 and a 50-44 on there as well. Masterclass, as Joe Rogan put it in the octagon, from Sean O'Malley. He remains the hunted at 135 pounds.
It certainly was a masterclass by Sean O'Malley. And I think the general consensus, which I think is correct, was that, hey, if it gets into the later rounds, if he's able to test O'Malley's chin, if he's able to test O'Malley's cardio, then Chito can pull this off. The problem is in order to do that, he would have to get by that technique disparity, that technique difference between him and O'Malley, and it just wasn't quite there. O'Malley is that good, and he's so technically superior to so many guys on the feet, and his length poses such a problem that he doesn't really allow for that to happen. I think there are still some question marks. Hey, if things get really difficult, if we get to those dark places that Gaethje has seen, that Dustin Poirier has seen, will he be able to come back from that? Can he respond through that insane adversity? Well, his tech technique really doesn't allow it. He doesn't let you get into that range. He's always in superior position to you. His long range weapons are just that good, and his speed and power are just that good. So O'Malley had a hell of a performance, and that's how you erase a loss that he experienced against Chito Vera, way back a couple years ago now.
There are so many angles on the Sean O'Malley front. 12 UFC fights now. Only loss, of course, to Marlon Chito Vera, the fight in which he was injured. But his wrestling and his grappling really hasn't been on display at all in the UFC. Yeah. And part of the reason for that is because a lot of these other athletes can't, as Jason Perillo put it, smother the speed and get inside to take this man down and challenge him in that realm. As we mentioned, going into that Aljamain Sterling title defense, he had an injured rib, and was he forced to grapple that night, maybe he wouldn't have become the world champion, but Aljo couldn't even get it there. And when Sean's takedown defense did have to hold up in that Sterling fight, it did. So in terms of the speed and the athleticism, Kenny, I know you touched on it, but just a huge discrepancy here. And I say that with all due respect to Marlon Chito Vera. They look like they were moving at different speeds, laterally moving forward. And I just think that, sometimes some of these athletes like Sean O'Malley, who did play a bunch of different sports growing up, they're just on a different plane when it comes to overall athleticism. And then they add mixed martial arts experience and training, and they become just on a different level. And it did look like two levels to me. Yeah,
big facts, my friend. I think that for O'Malley, his footwork was going to be a problem heading into that one. That was my concern for Chito. And really, that was the story of the fight. And you mentioned the athleticism as well. I think there's a couple things. I think he struggles a little bit with how to put himself in a position to land the strikes and combinations that he wants. He will kind of blitz himself in a position here and there, but O'Malley just knows where to be and when to be there. And certainly the speed was just a huge discrepancy, big disparity there in speed. And it was frustrating Chito for sure. And then when he started mixing up those knees down the middle, man, Chito is so damn tough. I mean, he hit a lot of shots that would have knocked out most men at 135 pounds. Chito Vera is not most men. And O'Malley was just able to expose a lot of different things. And it's a variety of weapons, too. It wasn't just his jab. It wasn't just that teep down the middle or the roundhouse. I mean, he was throwing a lot of different variety. And it shows just how talented O'Malley is. And I think a lot of people, they look at the hair, they look at the cockiness, they look at the lifestyle and how he lives and all that stuff. It's like, guys, you may not like him, but you cannot deny this kid is highly skilled. Sorry about it.
And he'll be the fan favorite, I would think, against most opposition not named Marlon Chito Vera. Although I will say Corey Sandhagen and Merab Dvalishvili have pretty big fan bases, ardent in their own right. But let us talk about that knee, if we could. I'm not sure if Marlon Chito Vera broke his orbital floor or his nose or all of the above. Ken Flo, have you ever broken a facial bone, not playing soccer, but actually training in mixed martial arts or fighting?
Yeah, see this big schnoz I got, this this New Jersey barrier. It's gotten broke a couple times, John. But thankfully, nothing like in the cheek area, orbital area, skull, jaw. It never had to deal with something like that, man. But thankfully, those are things that can affect you in a variety of ways. First of all, there's the overwhelming pain, there's the swelling, there's the ability to actually take away eyesight in an eye or blur it or make yourself dizzy. Like, these are things that fighters need to deal with. And for those that have been in there and those have seen this sport for a long time, it goes without saying, Chito Vera is an extremely tough individual who was determined to get that belt by any means necessary, but just wasn't able to get it done.
So when you broke your nose, did you keep fighting? Did you keep going?
Well, the good thing about breaking your nose, in my experience, is that it just goes numb, so you don't really feel it.
Yeah.
So you just kind of like, all right, my nose feels weird. I know it's there. I can't really feel it like I did before. So yeah, it just, I don't know. I mean, it impedes your ability to breathe well as well, especially with blood starting to come down there. But but I do think that is vastly different than, let's say, an orbital break, right? It's way less dangerous. I think breaking your nose is more typical. Yeah. Breaking your orbital, you may not be the same after. It has stopped other, boxing careers, for example.
Well, I'll tell you what I texted Marlon Vera yesterday. And oftentimes the hardest thing for me is after one of my friends, and I'm friends with both of these guys, but after somebody loses a fight like this, what do you say? So I wrote, I look up to you a lot, my man, inspired by your effort. Your fan base is amazing. When we showed you arriving to the arena, that place went absolutely fucking nuts. And if that body shot lands 1 minute earlier, you're probably the champ. Heal up, my brother. Much love. So that body shot at the end of the fight, a perfect left hook.
Yep.
Essentially on the horn. And Sean O'Malley eventually like cripples over up against the fence as he sort of recovers. And I don't know if I'm suggestive of the fact that maybe had Cheeto just managed risk a little bit differently earlier, that this could have materialized. I mean, this was a very one-sided fight, as many expected it to be. But it just goes to show you in mixed martial arts, Kenny, right? That body shot was one of the most debilitating strikes landed in that fight on either side. And it was Cheeto's best shot. It just happened to come literally at the end of the fight.
Yeah, it definitely was. And it's definitely one of those shots that will take the wind out of you. It will take your will out of your body. And you wonder what would happen if he did land that earlier. I think that, again, Cheeto's inability to get off to a great start hurt him here once again. And again, I think that goes back to his footwork or maybe lack thereof early on. But, and maybe I'm exaggerating there. Maybe there's something else going on. But, it does take Cheeto a little while to start to get his rhythm and to find his range. And going the way of the body, I think would have definitely helped him. It was just very difficult to get on the inside and do things at a high level there against Sean O'Malley. He's just very, very good, man. He really is.
He has said to us repeatedly in the fighter meetings that he gets calmer as these fights get bigger. And gosh, man, those visuals before the fight, the guy is just totally chill. And I don't know if for you, there's anything that you could apply to this conversation. Like when the fights got bigger for you, certainly the first time you fought Sean Shirk for the championship, it happened pretty quickly, right? But
yes.
Did you feel like you were calm going into the BJ Penn and Jose Aldo fights relative to title eliminators? Because I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but when you walked out to fight Joe Stevenson in a true title eliminator, the co-main event under Randy Couture and Brock Lesnar, there may be the most eyeballs ever on you. I mean, certainly the BJ Penn fight, but some of your better performances were in your biggest fights.
For me, and I stress this to other fighters, that your confidence really emanates and stems from your training, your training camps in particular for that fight. And I think that Sean Shirk, I was most nervous for, definitely. I think the BJ Penn fight, actually, I was probably more nervous for the BJ Penn fight. I had a horrible training camp for that one. And then for the Aldo fight, had a terrible weight cut. However, I did feel good heading into that from a confidence standpoint, just based on where my skills were at. So it varies, man. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like for certain fights, if I'm feeling good and I know I had a good training camp, I'm like, let's go, bring this, whether it's the Takanori Gomi fight or the Stevenson fight. So I think that, I don't know, it looked to me like this was a healthy O'Malley who had been in there with Cheeto Vera. And we saw that confidence and composure of him walking out here. And he really does relish in the spotlight. And I think he's envisioned this for a large part of his life. So he feels comfortable in this spot. And I do think that Kenny Florian as a non-champion would be very different than Kenny Florian as a champion. I think there is some kind of validation and security that happens when you have that belt. And it seemed to reveal itself with O'Malley walking in there and defending the belt for the first time. He just seemed like he was a little bit more at home.
Yeah, no, I think you put that beautifully. And I think you're wise to point to his health, because any health that he was lacking going into the Aljamain Sterling fight, he certainly had at UFC 299. Let us hear from Sean O'Malley after the fight on that knee that Cheeto Vera landed and the extent to which he was compromised.
Fucker hit me with a nice body shot. Tim told me, like, don't sit. You don't need you're winning the fight. You don't need to sit there. But I wanted that finish so bad. I thought I could sit in the pocket and fucking trade. And he hit me with a nice body shot. And I just was like, all right, he whooped his ass. I'm going to sit down and chillax for a little bit.
All right. So Sean, a little bit dismissive of it, I guess. But in terms of the risk mitigation in that fifth round, there was none of it from Sean O'Malley.
Yeah.
I mean, his output was absurd in that fifth and final round. And as you heard there, it flew in the face of what Tim Welch was looking for.
Bro, he was in shape, man. He was in shape. And he realizes in order for him to be effective, he has to be in crazy shape. He needs that volume and he needs that ability to throw a lot of shots because guess what? He's going to land a lot of those shots. And that's what guys are going to try to test. Certainly, that's what Merab Dvalishvili is going to try to test. What's your conditioning like against me, bro? And that is going to be something to see. I think we will see that sometime in the near future. But yeah, he was ready for this, man. And it shows the respect that he had for Chito Vera heading into this fight. I think it was a little risky, right, with him being in the lead. But I also think for me as a coach, I would have been fine with it in a lot of ways as well, just because he did have the speed advantage. Positionally, I thought he was in a good spot. He did give up that body shot. But yeah, man, he was in control for really every single minute of that fight.
Yeah, and I do think that he would have been able to fight through that body shot for a couple minutes if need be, right? So, but congratulations to Sugar Sean O'Malley. He was a little bit self-critical after the fact in terms of not getting the finish. There have not been a lot of decision wins for O'Malley thus far in the UFC. Had to settle for a unanimous decision here. Let's hear from Sugar Sean on his disappointment in not putting Chito Vera away.
Yeah, something about not getting the finish that just doesn't sit right with me. It's just like, fuck. But I also haven't watched it. Obviously, once I watch it back, I think I'll be a little bit more excited. But I always want to get that finish.
All right, so we have talked in the past about Sean O'Malley and how he has had a lot of grappling-heavy training camps. Augusto Tanquinho Mendez and Tim Welch putting him through the paces. Brandon Harris, the strength and conditioning coach, one of my good friends, just a huge force in this preparation process in terms of the cardiovascular base, the breathing. This is really an athlete that is investing in himself and training at the highest of levels. But Kenny, he now seemingly will have an opponent, the number one contender, Merab Dvalishvili, and more on this coming up with Ray Longo, of course, but who will test him in those realms. So as we do spin it forward, if we could table the Ilia Topuria business for a minute, if not a year, if not 18 months, what are your thoughts on Sean O'Malley, presumed to be making his second title defense against the number one contender, Merab Dvalishvili?
There's no question in my mind that is the most difficult matchup for him in that division from a stylistic standpoint. A lot of difficult matchups. That division is filled with killers. But I do think that Merab, from a stylistic standpoint, is perhaps the most difficult style matchup for him, just because of his ability to put you on your back, keep you there, and act like a Wolverine that is on methamphetamines. He does not stop. And I don't think there's a guy out there in and around that weight class that you can find to replicate that stuff. Sean O'Malley's going to have to do, I used to do fresh guys every round. He's going to need fresh guys every half a round.
Every minute, right?
Just wrestler heavy guys that are in your face, that are going to be shorter than you, that are going to be on you every second of that round. Again, every half round. That's how he prepares for this fight. That's what he's going to need. He's going to have to invest in that training camp, and the training camp should probably start today.
Right. I love it. So Merab is about a 2-1 favorite, at least right now, over Sugar Sean O'Malley. But I don't know, man. You still got to catch him, and there's a lot of risk to be navigated for Merab getting inside. Certainly, he is relentless in pursuit, and I think the question arises as to where is Merab's top game? What is his ability to actually keep Sean down there and do appreciable damage? O'Malley, I think, defensively as a grappler, can use his length, and I do think his get-ups are pretty good. I just think nobody's really seen the work that this guy is doing, and I think that Merab and his coaches are going to have to be acutely aware of that fact. Our poll question for the show was, of the four fighters listed here, Merab Dvalishvili, Corey Sandhagen, Petr Yan, and Umar Nurmagomedov, who is the biggest threat to Sean O'Malley's bantamweight title reign? And you said off the top there that you believe it's Merab. 66% of about 7,000 people agree with you. Then 16% said Umar Nurmagomedov, 14% Corey Sandhagen, and 4% for Petr Yan. We'll get to Petr Yan later. I fucking love that guy. I can't wait to see him in a rematch with Sean O'Malley. And it's amazing to think that how much this one win could do for him, because, man, when he hit that zone, there's nobody better to watch. But do you think that Merab is going to, I'm not asking for a fight prediction. Do you think that he can chain takedowns and keep Sean O'Malley down when you see Merab Dvalishvili minus 205 or so, Sean O'Malley coming back plus 175? Give us an early feel from you as to who you think actually wins that fight and who can sort of inflict their style upon the other.
You can never rule out anything in this sport. And I think you're right to talk about a lot of those grappling heavy fight camps where we haven't seen O'Malley do some of that. We saw some of that against Jan, who really was trying to keep him down, was really trying to utilize that grappling heavy game plan, and Sugar really wasn't allowing for it. I thought he did a fantastic job at getting back to his feet. And the fact that we've seen him experience a little bit of that, I think is a great sign. I also think you have to be really careful with those guys that you don't have a lot of info on, right? I mean, it's very easy sometimes to go, I'm destroying everybody on the ground. Sean O'Malley has nothing for me. Let me go in there and just do this. And whoops, you get submitted, or whoops, you can't keep them down. And some of the most difficult guys to keep down are those tall and lanky guys. They're a pain in the ass. Now, can O'Malley sustain that over the course of 25 minutes? That is more the question for me. Is can his conditioning hold up? I think skill-wise, he can be right there with Merab for about 15 minutes or so. After that, I'm not so sure if there's a human alive that could do that. That's why I'm saying that. But I do think there's an advantage in a lot of ways when you haven't showed a lot of aspects to your game. I think being able to train in secret and hide some of those skills is a huge advantage. I was extremely quiet about what I did and how I did it from a training standpoint.
Right.
Why? Because, there's a reason why, militaries all over the world are doing things at secret locations when they're training, right? They don't attack you when you're ready. They attack you when you're not ready. And there's a reason for that.
Right. So Merab Dvalishvili and Ilia Topuria are fellow Georgians and friends. And Ilia Topuria said, Sugar, congrats. Was a beautiful performance. There's a fight chasing you with Merab. Get that done first. And Ilia's mom, Inga Topuria, actually commented on Facebook, it's been a long time since our Merab has earned this fight and it needs to happen. So Topuria is going to step aside. And I think for me, the question beckons with O'Malley. To what extent is he going to slow play this bantamweight title reign? This was a fairly good turn, right? August in Boston and then returning in March. But I think it is hugely ambitious to think that Sean O'Malley is going to, say, headline International Fight Week, June 29th, in defense against Merab Dvalishvili. Now, we can look at some of these other bantamweight contenders and be hopeful that things are going to move expeditiously. But I think you're getting one more O'Malley fight, Ken Flo, in 2024. Maybe it's Madison Square Garden. Maybe it happens earlier than that. I don't think he's going to fast play his reign the way we've seen guys like Alexander Volkanovski and Israel Adesanya, step up and step in every 3 or 4 months.
And I don't think he should.
Right.
I don't think he should. I mean, how many guys have we seen that kind of start to push it a little bit more? Israel Adesanya, Volkanovski, these guys. And they're like, I want to stay busy. And okay, cool. And I want to make as much money as possible. Okay, cool. However, your body may not think it's so cool. And your training camps may not think it's so cool. There is preparation that you need to do for a Merab Dvalishvili fight. Okay. And it is a lot of work. It's a style that very few people are ready for. And you have to manage it correctly. And that also means not going too hard too quickly, which is something that I did against BJ Penn. I remember I came off a tonsillectomy. I got my tonsils removed. And I think I was training like a week after that. And I went so hard. And by the time the camp came around, I had nothing left the last 3 weeks. It was like the worst training, worst sparring I've ever had in my life. My body was just dead. So even on that aspect, I mean, there is so much that can go right and wrong during a training camp. You have to manage it well. You have to respect your body, let it recover, and do the work. I think he's going to slow his roll a little bit, take his time. I think June is way too quick of a turnaround. Oh, yeah. And I'm going to try to let that machine wait as long as possible in Merab Dvalishvili.
And he's lining his pockets in any number of different ways. Yeah. Sean O'Malley is already a wealthy man, and he's going to be very financially free when his career is said and done, even if he doesn't have some long-standing reign. But my biggest question mark for Sean O'Malley, short-term and long-term as a champion, is always going to be durability. And it was nice to see his body get through these 25 minutes. Cardio, to your point, was fantastic. He was in a boot and a cast 10 minutes after the fight. But Dominic Cruz talks a lot about his 2016 when he fought TJ Dillashaw in January, Uriah Faber in June, and then Cody Garbrandt in defense in December. 3 title fights in a span of 11 or 12 months, and it was just biting off more than he could chew. So if you look at Sean O'Malley, August, and he got injured during that training camp for Aljamain Sterling, then this fight in March, so it would be June or July, which would be 3 title fights in a calendar year. I just don't think that that is going to be the course for Sean O'Malley. So those expecting to see this momentum continue sometime this summer, I just think you're going to have to be patient. You know, it seems like the Noche UFC focus is going to be the Mexicans. So I don't know, maybe it's Madison Square Garden for Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili. Maybe it's December, but I do think you're going to have to wait the better part of 2024 to see the budding UFC superstar Sean O'Malley again. But congratulations. What a performance. Anything else on Sean O'Malley? I'm sure we'll touch on it with Longo, but anything else before we move on to the Diamond, Ken?
Yeah, I kind of want to just reiterate your point there. I think that if you look at some of the other champions in history and how they manage their careers, let's take Islam Makhachev and Khabib Nurmagomedov. They are taking their time in between fights. And maybe that's for a variety of reasons, but they want to make sure that their body is ready to go at the most optimal levels. And I think that there's a reason why those guys have such fantastic records, and you really don't see a whole lot of blemishes from them. You do have to manage them. You're fighting the most elite fighters in the world, okay? And every damn little thing matters. A bad hair day could be the difference between you winning and losing. And I think for O'Malley, I think we're going to see him take a little bit more time.
All right. We will ask Ray Longo later just how good he thinks Sean O'Malley is. We're not going to get into the conversation as to the greatest bantamweight of all time, but we will get Ray and Ken Flo's thoughts on just how good Sean O'Malley is and maybe how good he can be. And of course, Ray Longo will be in the opposite corner in all likelihood the next time Sean O'Malley defends his title. Dustin Poirier over Benoit Saint Denis. The knockout comes at the 2-minute and 32-second mark of round 2. Kenny just can't contain that smile ear to ear. He closed plus 185, the betting underdog on DraftKings Sportsbook. And my thesis statement at this point on Dustin Poirier is that he does not need the undisputed UFC lightweight championship for his legacy. And that is an amazing statement to think that he has realized so much success in every other fucking bucket and compartment that he does not need the undisputed championship. But Kenny, let us talk about this result. You saw it coming the whole way, Dustin Poirier by KO in round 2.
Yeah, there's a reason I had so much drool on my desk here before the last fight. I was like, am I not seeing something here? What's going on? Now, listen, BSD had some great moments in that fight. And you're talking about a special forces soldier. All those things are pertinent and relevant here. However, when you're going against a guy in Dustin Poirier who has gone to hell, seen the devil, and go, he's not really a bad guy. It's actually not too bad. You might like it. It's enjoyable sometimes. This guy, he's done it against Max Holloway. He did it against Gaethje. He did it against Chandler. He did it against all these guys. And it's like, he knows that too. He knows that, which is why he has accepted, and I truly believe him when he says that. He knows he may leave a piece of him and probably will leave a piece of himself inside that octagon. And be careful with the guy who has already accepted those terms and those consequences. That is a very dangerous man. He knows how to survive. He's made adversity his friend. And I think that's what we saw here. It wasn't always the prettiest thing, but Dustin Poirier was going to find a way, and he was going to fight to the bitter end. But more than anything else, on the finish itself, those shots on the inside were just brutal. It was wide arcing punches from Benoit Saint Denis and short, crisp, accurate punches from Dustin Poirier. And man, when he sees that you're hurt, he's gonna put an end to it.
There were a lot of reasons for Dustin Poirier to take this fight. One of them was because he knew if he could produce this result, and in his head, this was probably a very likely result, that it would endear him to an even greater extent to the masses, right? But you also fight Benoit Saint Denis before he gets really fucking good. So yeah, exactly. This kid is just getting going, Kenny. He's 27 years of age. I thought at times it was reckless abandon, which maybe is a good thing. And other times I thought it was just a little bit reckless, a little bit too rushed. You know, he doesn't necessarily want to rush his career as much as his call out of Dustin Poirier suggests. And I bring that up because, as we mentioned, he had a big win over somebody in France, maybe Thiago Moises in September. And then the promotion turned him around quickly to fight Matt Frevola in November. And even though he kicked Matt Frevola's head back to Long Island, just kidding, Sal, I love your boy. Even though that result happened, it doesn't necessarily mean that he should have taken the Matt Frevola fight as quickly as he did. And then the next thing you know, he's fighting the former UFC interim lightweight champion and future Hall of Famer, Dustin Poirier. So, you know, I do think that all careers are handled differently. It's great that Benoit Saint Denis is on the fast track. I'm sure his show money is already pretty good. But Kenny, he is very much a developing fighter at 27 years of age.
He is. And I also think that's why Dustin Poirier followed Sun Tzu's thinking of know your enemy. And what I mean by that is a fighter is going to fight. And if you can lure him in those spots, Benoit was not going to turn down a fight. And right. I think he was able to lure him into go, no, I know this dude's a fighter and I'm going to make it a scrap. I've been there. I'm not sure you have. And I also think I have some technical skills that I can expose there. And Benoit did not turn down that crazy scrap. And in tight, that's where, Benoit kind of just fell victim to those short shots of Dustin Poirier. But I couldn't agree more. This is something that he's going to learn from. He's going to learn a lot from this fight. First of all, seemed like he had some issues heading into this with a staph infection and all that stuff, right? There's that. He's going to figure out he's more human than he thought he was. But more than anything else, he did lack the experience necessary to beat one of the great lightweights in UFC history in Dustin Poirier. So he's going to improve his boxing, I'm sure. He's going to learn about patience after this one. As long as he goes back and watches this with a lot of honesty between him and his coaches, Benoit is going to be a problem moving forward. He looks like a welterweight out there because, listen, Dustin Poirier is a big dude, very big for 155 pounds, but Benoit was even bigger, dude. Like, he is massive for the weight class. He knows how to use his weight. He knows how to take you down and control you. He put Dustin in some really tough spots. He'll clean up his submission game even more, and he'll clean up his patience and boxing and tight. And I think Benoit absolutely is going to be a problem in the future for a lot of lightweights out there.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I know we were high for this conversation, I think, Kenny, but I was talking to you a little bit about Benoit Saint Denis' midsection and maybe him lacking the girth that I thought he would have. Right. And I bring it up in the context of Dustin Poirier talking about defending in the clinch and up against the cage and his hips, and maybe he wasn't necessarily as strong, Saint Denis, as Dustin expected. Now, part of that could have been because Benoit Saint Denis had staph and I believe was on antibiotics, right? And missed 3 or 4 days of critical training at some point in time. You know, he didn't really want to talk a lot about it, right? But I told you, Ken Flo, in whatever condition, that at the morning weigh-in, when these guys were weighing in, the official weigh-in, when I looked at them from the side, Poirier just had the thickness that Saint Denis did not at all have. And I know Saint Denis was sucked out, but I don't know, man, like in terms of the hips and just the overall build, you know, he's big and broad shoulders and fought at welterweight and all of those things. And a lot of Benoit Saint Denis' career took place at 165 pounds versus Dustin Poirier fighting at featherweight. But I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that I had that observation, pointed it out to you, and then Dustin talked about maybe Saint Denis not being as strong as he thought.
Yeah, and it's why I took that observation from you with a lot of seriousness. I think that absolutely could be a factor. A couple things. First of all, having been on antibiotics before a fight because of staph, it weakens you. There's no question about that, or it weakened me anyway. That was how I dealt with taking antibiotics. I also felt like my energy just wasn't the same, and also my ability to cut weight wasn't the same. For whatever reason, I seem to retain a lot more water on antibiotics than maybe some other people. So that could have been the case as well. And having to do a weight cut like that when your body's trying to hold on to as much water as possible as it fights a nasty infection, well, that's the perfect storm in a very bad way. So yeah, and I also think for people at home who may not get those close looks, when you're able to get up and close and personal and see these guys right in front of you during weight cuts, as they're walking, what their demeanor is, how their eyes look, how sucked down, like those are things that a camera and a television just can't really relay as well as you being right there. And that's why I took that comment with such seriousness. It's a real thing, man. When you see that, you'll notice it, and they can affect you again, especially at the highest levels.
Benoit Saint Denis has a lot of things going for him, and we will get to Poirier. Rest assured, I'm going to suck his dick on the other side. But Benoit Saint Denis has a lot of things going for him, right? Certainly, France is blowing up as far as their overall national interest in mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
His ability to carry that market, I think, is undeniable. Ciryl Gane factors into that equation as well. He also has this fight that he received against Dustin Poirier very early on in his career. And you got to think there are different reasons as to why he got this fight, right? But part of the reason it appealed to Dustin was because he was all the rage with the fan base. This dude on the seek and destroy mission, just dusting all of these lightweights, right? So he's going to get big fights, Kenny. But I ask you, fact or fiction, does Benoit Saint Denis ever reach the top 5 or fight for the UFC championship?
Gosh, I'll say fiction as of right now. I think that you have a guy at the top of the division who is a superior wrestler, a superior grappler, and a superior striker for that matter. So I don't see a whole lot of people beating Islam Makhachev, but I think they have similar games, and Islam just has a better one at this stage of the game. But I do think he will probably fight for a title at some point. I do think he's that good, and I do think he carries that level of determination to be able to get back to the top and come back from that last loss to Dustin Poirier.
Yeah. I do think Benoit Saint Denis eventually will work his way into the top 5. I just think it's a hard division to suggest that anybody could be a future UFC lightweight champion. But I'm excited to see the reascent for Benoit Saint Denis. But Dustin Poirier, man, I mean, what else can be said? And I know at times he's been flattered to hear us refer to him as a future Hall of Famer, and he continues to just make that undeniable, I think, with every passing fight. And it's amazing to think that as Justin Gaethje wins the BMF belt in the manner in which he did against Dustin Poirier last July, and now people are talking about Dustin Poirier fighting Islam Makhachev. It's a little bit murky and muddy as far as Gaethje is concerned, because Justin Gaethje, to me, is the rightful number 1 contender, and if he beats Max Holloway, should challenge for the belt. But gosh, man, how do you not at least consider rewarding Dustin Poirier based upon the entire body of work, this 22nd UFC win, accepting this fight for the promotion, 5-round co-main event, helping drive the pay-per-view with O'Malley. Dustin Poirier back in prime position, man. And a lot of people felt like if he could produce this type of result, he'd be exactly here.
No question that Dustin Poirier has put himself in a great position here after that fight against Benoit Saint Denis, a fight that he didn't really have to take. I'll say this, as a guy that has seen Dustin Poirier when really he was just a kid and just starting, he was a featherweight back then, and to see where he is now as a man, it's amazing to see. It's why I like teaching jiu-jitsu and martial arts so much. First, you get a kid who may come in the gym, his head is down, shoulders curled over, doesn't really have a lot of confidence, doesn't look you in the eye. And then as they build skills, they become more confident, their self-esteem changes, all that stuff. I've seen that same development from Dustin Poirier, right, on a more extreme level. And it's just awesome to see how martial arts and, doing very well as a professional can change your life. And Dustin's at a point in his life, I think, where he's taking it fight by fight. He's really checking in with himself to see if he wants this, what he wants in his life, what's motivating him. And he's taking his steps very carefully, as he should. I think he really cares about his legacy. He cares about this sport and how he approaches it. And he cares about his family, of course. So I think we'll see him in 1 or 2 more fights. I think there'll only be big fights from here on out. And again, to see a guy who has always been nice and polite and has worked his ass off to get where he's at, how can you not be a fan of Dustin Poirier, man?
So Ali Abdelaziz is a friend of mine, and when I've dealt with various things in my career, he has reached out, and that has certainly resonated with me. But I do believe that he has a really difficult job because of how many high-profile fighters he has in these high-profile divisions. So here's what Ali Abdelaziz had to say on social media after Dustin Poirier's win over Benoit Saint Denis. DP took a huge risk tonight and came out on top and looked amazing. Dustin versus Islam Makhachev in June, especially since everyone else has fights. If the UFC is good with this, then Islam would be game. Now, it's complicated because Ali Abdelaziz manages Justin Gaethje as well. And he manages Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad and a lot of these elite welterweights as well. But as far as the lightweight divisional pecking order and picture is concerned, Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, in my mind, are 1 and 1A as far as the greatest UFC fighters of all time to have never realized undisputed gold. And now they both have a case that Dustin didn't have 48 hours ago. But Justin Gaethje, on the strength of that win for the BMF championship, deserves to fight Islam Makhachev almost independent of what happens with Max Holloway. Now, if Max Holloway comes out and beats Justin Gaethje, then all of a sudden Holloway's a guy who's in the mix at 155 pounds. And I certainly wouldn't deny Max either. But it's crazy how muddy this is for Justin Gaethje. And I've got to think that if you're Justin Gaethje's family and friends, you're like, what is going on here, man? You know, this is the best version of our guy, right? We beat Rafael Fiziev, and that was essentially Gaethje doing for Fiziev what Dustin Poirier just did for Benoit Saint Denis, you know? Like, I just feel like if you're Gaethje friends and family, you know, you're excited for UFC 300, you're the betting favorite there, defending the BMF belt, but in part, you got to be like, what are we doing defending this made-up belt when we have an ironclad case for a shot at the undisputed title?
Yeah, and I think he does. Listen, I think Dustin Poirier is a fantastic candidate. However, I think Gaethje is in the driver's seat here. I think he's in a position with a win over Max Holloway to get that next shot. Now, and I love, there's another reason you love Dustin Poirier, right? That meme he posted about the guillotine, right? The game plan, and then looking back and going the guillotine. He kept going for that guillotine. So if I'm Islam Makhachev, right? It's like, I'm licking my lips too. I'm going, this guy can't stop my takedowns. He's not going to stop my takedown. You're not getting me in a guillotine. I'm going to take you down on control. I'm going to do what Khabib did to you. I mean, and again, obviously, I love Dustin Poirier. I just think it's not a great matchup for him. And talk about, you know, what we were talking about earlier with Sean O'Malley. If your goal is to hold on to that belt for as long as possible, then guess what you do? You pick the fights that are going to set you up to be able to do that. And I think it's an easier fight for Islam Makhachev to face someone like a Dustin Poirier than it is against Gaethje. I think Gaethje is a little bit more dangerous because he does have that wrestling background. Now, I'm not sure he can stop those takedowns, but I do think because he does have that better defensive base, on paper at least, that I would consider him a more dangerous fight or a more difficult fight for an Islam Makhachev than, say, Dustin Poirier. And then, of course, you have that head-to-head battle that they had not too long ago. So, yeah, I think Dustin either may take a fight between that and Islam. He may take another fight or just wait to see how that plays out and then kind of slip in there for a championship fight. So, that's how I see it anyway.
Yeah. And the calendar plays into this as well. I think part of the reason why you see Ali Abdelaziz and Islam Makhachev maybe pushing towards a Dustin Poirier fight is because Ramadan is now underway. June would align with their calendar. And if you're Justin Gaethje, you know, you got to think there are going to be some warlike tendencies in that fight with Max Holloway. You would probably want more time to prepare for Islam Makhachev. And I do think that Justin Gaethje is probably going to make $4 or $5 million at UFC 300, right, as a defending champion. And money is undeniably a part of all of this. But man, Justin Gaethje has earned a championship opportunity, and now so has Dustin Poirier. So Dustin Poirier in this guillotine, man, guillotine. I'm channeling my inner Frank Mir, calling it a guillotine.
But that's fine, yeah.
So, you know, the guillotine came up on the broadcast, and I looked down and I see, I think, 7 career wins by submission for Dustin Poirier, none of them by guillotine. But fuck, if he's not going to continue jumping him, I don't know if it's in this soundbite when he sort of was intimating that you secure 0% of the gillies that you don't jump. You cannot deny those facts. Let's hear from Dustin after the fact in terms of his penchant for not heeding his coach's advice and jumping the gilly.
It seemed like in the second round, maybe there was a moment you thought maybe I don't always have to jump the gilly.
Nope. I never thought that once.
No.
Another thing, too, like I thought he was going to be a little bit – he was physically strong, but I thought technically – I know he comes from a judo background. I thought his hips and his grip strength was going to be better against the fence. I took myself down every time. You know, when I was on the mat, it was because I jumped guillotines. And you miss all the ones you don't jump, first of all. But I thought he was going to be a little bit tougher with the takedowns against the fence.
That's
pretty
amazing.
interesting. And that audio is pretty interesting, is it not?
Yeah.
About just the strength against the fence. And
Absolutely. And listen, that's the other thing about being in a fight, right? It's like the fighter, you should always concede that the fighter is going to know best there. He was following a feeling, and I think that's a very important thing. And you can't actually argue that it wasn't effective in certain spots. He actually was hitting that front kind of Greco-style guillotine with the head in the middle, almost that 10-finger choke. And Benoit was letting go of those takedowns at times, right? The ones where he was jumping on them against the cage, I'm not sure I loved that aspect of it. He certainly doesn't want to do that against Islam Makhachev, in my humble opinion.
sure.
However, you could argue there were some spots where they were effective, and of course, being in a choke can definitely take away some of the energy, and you can't say that didn't play a part in that fight against Benoit. So he was feeling it and going for it, and ended up working, man. He ended up getting the win. So kudos to Dustin. But like, again, him posting that meme, it just shows just how he doesn't take himself that seriously. I mean, you got to love it, man.
All right, well, we congratulate Dustin Poirier, and I do think it's interesting. When Dustin was preparing for Khabib Nurmagomedov, he said, I'm not going to know exactly how he feels until I'm in there with him. And rest assured, Khabib was just as fucking strong as Dustin. All right, that was Headlines brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila.